right. Hello, everybody. I think we are live. Let's see here. Let me just make sure everything's looking good. I think we're live, so we should be good. How's everybody doing? It's a little bit late today. There was a church event going on today, so I wanted to go to the church event. I went to a different church to support because a lot of churches aren't being allowed to be open for worship, and so there was a church here in California that the pastor was threatened with getting arrested actually if he had church services, and they were threatening the first 1,000 people to give them a some sort of fine, but that never happened. The police never came. It was actually a really nice service, so getting around a little bit later today than I wanted to. But the really interesting thing that's come up recently is there has been a payroll tax cut. And, there was a comment that we approved in the group a little bit ago, and it had something, we're close to 400 comments at this point. So I figured this subject was something interesting to talk about. And I want to talk about some things that may actually be true. And there's just a lot of assumptions being made that we don't know anything about yet. So I also wanted to, talk about that a little bit. So Peter's saying there's a serious echo. Let me try something, Peter. Let me try something. There's a big echo here. Let me see if this will be better. Let me see if this is better. Just give me one. Okay. So is this better for the echo, Peter? Okay, good. He says okay now. Good. Sound is the most important thing, right? You can shut off, you don't have to look in my face, but if you want to have a conversation, you have to hear me. So I want to make sure the sound's always good. I try to use a good camera, but that doesn't always work out well. So anyways, I wanted to chat with you today about this payroll tax cut because it was something I wanted to talk about anyways. But, I didn't know there would be quite this much passion about it. Almost 400 comments on a post. That's pretty extreme. So I definitely wanted to address this and address some of the things. I also would like you to put any your biggest questions, or your biggest concerns. And I'm not saying have all the answers, by the way. Not saying have all the answers, but I think some of the things I was seeing are not quite rational. And, my goal for you folks, like every time there's something crazy going on, right? I try to jump on and bring you back down to earth. Remember back in February or March when the market was crashing and everybody's going crazy, and I had to hop on and just kind of cool everybody out, let them know what was going on. So maybe this is one of those things, right? Because we don't actually know a whole lot at this point. Okay, we just know what has been said. What's been said is that the president is doing an executive order to put us on a payroll tax holiday. Okay, so what that means is it's not required to be paid now. It's not officially saying it doesn't have to be paid because there's probably some other processes in place. But more than likely, I just doubt they're gonna force everybody to pay it at the end of the year, but it could happen. Okay, so we're gonna talk about some things there. And then he also did mention he wants to get rid of it, but again, that's not happened at this point. So I don't want everybody to completely freak out yet. Okay. What I do want to talk about is there's some people that are really upset, right, about this. And I think sometimes we don't always take into account the whole picture when it comes to what we're looking at with something like this, okay? So right now, what we do know officially is that it's going to be to the end of the year, okay? So we're talking 6 months, okay? 6 months on a payroll tax holiday. Because I think he said back to July 1st, but I could be wrong, or it could be August 1st. So maybe 5 months or 6 months, something like that. So we know, okay, this is something everybody's aware of, that 2035, if we don't make any changes to Social Security, there's expected to be in the neighborhood of some places say 20, some places say 24% cut on the pay of benefits, okay? So I've talked about this before many, many times. I think it's highly unlikely that if you are, let's say you take your benefits and you turn 70, in 2030, for example, and then in 2035, are they going to cut your benefits 24%? I highly doubt that. I more likely think that it's going to be folks like myself, right? I'm turning 40 this year. So more than likely, folks like myself, we're going to have a bigger problem down the road than anybody here that's looking at retirement probably in the next 5 to 10 years. That's the majority, of folks here. So what will this payroll tax holiday do? Potentially, it could bring up that date, right? Where the Social Security Trust Fund essentially no longer has any reserves. And so they may have to make that cut a little bit before 2035, okay? So, if that's the case, we got 15 years. So let's talk about that a little bit. What would you do if you had 15 years to plan for something, right? The average Social Security benefit is about $1,500. I think it's like $1,461 or something like that. But let's call it $1,500 to make it even. If that was your Social Security income and you were supposed to be getting $1,500, the equivalent today, because obviously that will increase with inflation, and you had to lose 20% of that, that would be $300 a month. Okay. So it's a significant chunk, right? It's definitely a significant chunk. And for those on the lowest income tiers, it's going to have probably the biggest impact, right? But, for a lot of folks, $300 is not going to make or break the whole retirement. Definitely could for some. So I want to be sensitive to that issue. And I don't want you to lose anything. But what I want you to remember is that, this is not going away yet. Okay. So we're not losing Social Security tomorrow. The whole world's not coming to an end by doing this payroll tax holiday. There is potential, like I said, again, for the date where Social Security can no longer be 100% funded based on what it's expected to do today could get moved sooner, okay? And one thing to remember, though, is when Social Security was established, it was only meant to last maybe a year or two, right? Because it was supposed to be those last couple of years because most people worked in factories and they worked in these really hard jobs. They weren't retiring at 62 and living until 102 like some people are today, or 92 like some people are today. It was never meant to be a program that covered people for 30 or 40 years, right? That's what it's become today, and that's why it's such a mess, okay? So we all know there's going to have to be some changes to the Social Security program for it to last a long time, right? There's a lot of things that can be done, okay? You can take off the limit. Right now, the limit, I believe, is $137,700, that you pay your Social Security tax up to. If you earn more than that, you don't have to pay any more of the 6.2 for Social Security, but you still have to pay the Medicare, right? So the Medicare is 1.45. So they could raise that. They can also increase the full retirement age again. They can reduce benefits. They can privatize it. There's a lot of things that could be done. If they raise the tax on it 2%, about 1.7, I believe it is, that would fund it for the next 75 years. So this is not like the whole world is crashing down, okay? I saw a lot of folks acting like the world is coming crashing down, and I don't think that's the case. What I also want you to kind of try to take into account, okay? And this is going to be, for some people, you're probably not going to like what I'm going to say, but that's okay. For some people, especially these folks that are considered our, what are they called? The essential workers, the essential employees. That's what we're talking about here. A lot of these folks are not making a lot of money, okay? Let's be really honest. So there was another executive order passed to bring the federal portion of Social Security down from 600 to 400, right? So to continue it still, but bring it down from 600 to 400. So other states differ, but in California, the normal unemployment is about $600 a week. I think it's $615. And if you add the federal, you're getting another $600. And people are just getting this regardless of income, right? So they're making about $1,200 a week. So that's $4,800 a month. And these were people that might have been making $15 or $20 before. So they were making more than they were making when they were working, okay? So part of the idea of lowering it, I agree with, because it was a disincentive. I know for a fact people that I know that chose not to go back to work and said they were scared to go back to work because, in all honesty, they were making more than they would going to work every day and risking their health. So I kind of get where they're coming from. Doesn't mean it's right, but that means that is a real thing. So we do have to get people back to work. So I do think that's important. But when it comes to this payroll tax holiday, this is going to affect people that are currently working or that that have been working. The people that are on unemployment, it's not going to affect them at all. Okay, so the people on unemployment, they're already getting unemployment, obviously, and for a lot of people, it's less than what they make. But in most areas, $3,000 or $4,000 a month is enough to survive with the basics, and you can get by during this time, which is not a great time. But for the folks that are having to show up, for example, let's say at Target, okay, or Walmart, I know some of them are getting hazard pay, but even in California, it's only like $15 an hour, okay? So to talk about some real numbers with that, this is where I find myself trying to be understanding of what's going on, because I've seen a lot of articles, okay? The media has jumped all over this, all right? I've seen a lot of articles that are bashing this move, okay? And I'm trying to remain as nonpartisan as I can, because I do, for those of you that don't know, okay, my name's Jason Hamilton. I run Keep It Simple Financial Planning. I help a lot of people that are planning for retirement, okay? In my other life, my wife runs a nonprofit. and we serve people that are very low and really not even moderate income, mostly low income people in Los Angeles. Okay, and so the average income for the people that we serve there in Los Angeles is in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000. That's kind of the average income for people there. And so people that are living on that little of income, to be honest, it's not an easy life. They do qualify for a lot of subsidies, and they do get things like healthcare, basically for free. But it's not easy. When you talk about rent on average being about $2,000 a month, if you're making $3,500 or so before taxes, that doesn't leave much left over to cover rent. So a lot of times you'll see two families sharing an apartment. That's very common to what you see here. So I want to talk a little bit about the actual money that people will save by this payroll tax holiday. Okay, and I want you to kind of think about it like that, not from the perspective of, my Social Security is going to go away, because it's not going to go away. Okay, we might have a reduction at some point, but that's not where we're at now. So I really want to keep you focused on today, like what we know today, what's actual fact today, not what may happen in the future. And let's be honest, folks, if we switch administrations to a more democratic thing, they're probably just going to move this tax back. So I doubt this is going to be something that's just banished forever, but who knows? I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But let's just talk about today and what might happen between now and the end of the year. Okay, so some numbers really quickly. So for the people making $15 an hour, okay, most of these people do not work full time, but these numbers are based on full time just because it makes things kind of even across the road. So for someone making $15 an hour at 2,000 hours a year, which is kind of the average, 40 hours a week with 2 weeks of vacation, they would make $30,000. Okay, that's before taxes, right? So that $30,000 per year, again, it's not a lot of money. Okay, let's be really honest. That's not a lot of money. And that's definitely, I don't think that's considered poverty level, but it's not much above it, to be honest. Okay, so if those people are making $30,000 a year, got this payroll tax holiday of 7.65% of their pay that they get to keep, that's $198.75 per month that they get to keep. Okay, so think about that for a second. That's about the equivalent of about 12 hours of work. Okay, so 12 hours of work right there. That's pre-tax money, by the way. So post-tax money, that might be more in the neighborhood of about 15 hours of work, something like that, maybe 14 hours of work. But $198, and for those of you, okay, for those of you that have ever been in the place where you didn't have a lot of money, I've been there before, right? So I remember graduating college and trying to find my first job and trying to pay all the bills and everything like that. Back in those days, and I can probably live on somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 a week on food, right? For myself. I just shopping at the store, making my own lunches, things like that. So for a single person making $30,000 a year, at $198 savings, that's about $50 a week. It might not be enough for a full week of groceries, but it could be 4 days of groceries, 4 or 5 days of groceries if you're buying things like just eating at the store, right? And this is not going out to eat, obviously, because that's just crazy. You can't really afford that. But $198 is $50 a week. That could be half of somebody's groceries for the week, right? That's food for 3 days or 4 days, right? So that's kind of a big deal, right? For the people that make $20 an hour, so that's about $40,000 a year, that equates to about $265 per month that they would get to keep, that they can use for things like paying for food or whatever else it may be. Something that I think we're forgetting about right now is there's a lot of single parents right now that are having to deal with their children at home, right? And they're trying to hire babysitters. In California, what they're doing is they're opening up very few schools, but they're actually opening up some schools, the actual locations, but not to do school. They're opening it up to use as kind of a daycare center in a sense. And they're charging about $200 a week for daycare just to keep your kids there. So they're allowing parents to possibly bring their kids to drop off, but then they're going to charge them extra $800 a week so that then the parent can go to work. It's a real tough thing right now, especially for single parents, to think about that you really have to go to work to pay the bills, but if you have kids to take care of because they're not in school, then you have to hire a babysitter, right? So maybe this money helps out with some of that, babysitter money or some of the, the funds they need to drop their kids into school so they can work the full-time job. This is not a good situation right now that we're in with this coronavirus and just so much uncertainty right now with the actual plan on what things are going to be. If you realize we're in August right now, folks, schools open up in August generally, September, for sure by most other places. But most of the people that are the essential workers, these folks are not usually high income workers, just being really honest with you. Most of these folks are the 15 to $20 an hour type of folks. So bringing home an extra 200 or 198 to 265 for someone in that range, I think that's significantly impactful. So, again, if this was forever, maybe there's a different conversation. We're probably going to have to revisit this conversation at the end of the year if it does change. But this is something I want you to be trying to think about and not always thinking about Social Security running out 10, 15, 20 years down the road. It's something to think about, but I don't think that is the actual big thing to be, concerned about at this point. So one thing, let me actually take a step back and break this down. So let's talk about what this is. Okay, so yesterday, President Trump announced an executive order for all Americans earning less than $100,000 a year to be granted a payroll tax holiday. So what this means is, the payroll tax you pay, it's 7.65% of your gross pay up to $137,700. And for business owners, it's 15.3%, right? Because I'm a business owner, right? So I have to pay the 7.65 for the employee portion, plus I have to pay the portion that for a business owner. So any of my employees, I have to pay both parts of that, okay? So for the $20 an hour person, that's about $40,000 a year. That's about $265 a month. The average salary in the U.S., the average income is, according to CNBC.com, is $56,516. I just did a quick Google search on that, okay? So that's just what it said. Could be higher or lower. So to the average worker, this is going to mean about $360.29 per month that they get to take home, right? I mean, that's $90 a week. I think that is something that's significantly impactful. And it's something that I just think there's a lot of frustration going on in politics right now between the two sides, that they both have their own vision of what's right and what's wrong. And I just think, there's just a lot of basically things that aren't happening right now, and a lot of people that are struggling. We can't, continue to push this off. But $360 per month to the average family, that's a big chunk, folks. That's a really big chunk of money. So think about that a little bit. And that's something to consider. And then for the business owner, okay, so this salary figure does include business owners, so the average being $56,516. For the business owner, that's $720 a month that they get to take home, right? That's a big chunk of money, for the average business owner. $720 a month is basically groceries for the whole family for the whole month. Like let's say you have a family of 4, for example. We live off less than that. My wife and I think we spend about $600 a month, and we really we spoil ourselves with food, right? We buy organic, we buy grass-fed type stuff. I don't spend a lot of money on other things. I drive a Hyundai, for example, but I do spend money on good food because I think that's important. And I still keep our groceries usually about $650, right? So for the two of us, so $720 a month for a business owner is quite a bit. So these are things that, I just want you to consider, right? I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm not saying it's a good move or a bad move. All I'm saying is right now we're in a really tough spot. And the people that are working, going to work every day, making less than make unemployment, that is something that I think is a very stressful thing to deal with every day. But they're trying to do the right thing to kind of, fulfill their place in society. And for those that are getting unemployment, you might have gone down, let's say, again, California is a little higher probably, but they're going to go down from $1,200 a week to $1,000 a week, losing the $200 off the top. So not great, but it's still, you're still going to get $1,000 a week, and that's more than most people make, right? So $1,000 a week is $48,000 a year, and the average worker is at $56,000. So it's really, that's really not too bad. So I know people that are unemployed are not happy about this. But try to think about the kind of the low, moderate income workers, the ones making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 that might have kids, and things like that to support. It's not a lot of money. In California, anything below $100,000 is considered low, moderate income. You qualify for medical insurance subsidies. So for most of you around the country that want to retire early, you guys are dealing with this at before 65. If you make over $67,000 a year, $67,640, I believe it is, you lose your subsidy for your healthcare. So you'll see your healthcare go from like $200 or $300 a month up to like $1,400 to $2,000 a month. That's what happens. In California, it's actually $100,000 because the cost of living is so high here. So 100,000, making below 100,000 here is considered low to moderate income, and you actually get subsidies. You can get down payment assistance on a home. There's a lot of things that you get here making less than $100,000. So try to take that into account. I have clients that are in Iowa, Idaho, the Midwest. And honestly, they're living comfortably off $2,500 a month, once they have their homes paid off, for example, in retirement. That's a beautiful place to be, but not all areas in the country are like that. But if you're making $30,000 in the Midwest, that might be okay. But $30,000 in California is basically poverty level. You have to have roommates. So try to keep that, take that into account. So one other thing that I want to bring up here is I saw some comments about why don't they just tax the rich more? Okay, so if you haven't noticed in the past, like California is probably the most progressive state. I'm not a fan of a lot of the policies here, by the way. I'm much more of, when it comes to I think business should be easy to do. In California, business is very difficult to do. It's very expensive to do. A lot of fees, a lot of process, and there's actually no guide for this. I just went through this whole thing with our state franchise tax board. There's no guide on how to do everything. Each business has its own way to do things, depending on what type of business you're in. So it's kind of a mess, okay? But here's what California's proposing. So, and coming to a town near you, right? So this is what could happen down the road if we're not careful. So I think we should be really careful on how we approach some of these subjects, because it sounds good now, but it may not work out the way we want to in the future. Okay, so for those of you in states that have no tax, for those of you in Texas, Florida, and these other Washington, these other states that have no income tax, okay? In California, once you make over $57,824, 9.3% of your income is going to state tax, okay? Remember I told you that anything below $100,000 is considered low to moderate income here. This is where you get subsidies on healthcare, home down payment assistance for homes, things like that. But above $57,824, you're going to pay 9.3% of your taxes, or 9.3% of your income to taxes. That's a big chunk there, okay? If you make $1 million or more, our highest tax rate right now is 13.3%, okay? It used to be 10, and then it went to 13.3. So if you are at $1 million of income, you are currently paying about 53% and change of your total income to taxes, somewhere in that range. Okay, so what they're proposing here, and this is probably going to go through, by the way, what they're proposing here is that on any gross income over $1 million, they're going to add 1%. Okay, so it'll go from 13.3 to 14.3. On income over $2 million, you're going to go from 13.3 to 16.3. And then on income over $3 million, it's going to go from 13.3 up to 16.8. Okay. So now we're talking about 56.8% of your money going to taxes if you make that much. Listen, I'm not saying these people can't afford it or whatever it may be, but anytime you're earning millions of dollars a year, you usually have some sort of skill, or you've built a business, or you have some sort of special thing. People don't just get this magic money that comes to them over $1 million, okay? So that's what's probably going to happen, I think, in the future, is that the people that make over a certain amount of money are going to get taxed higher, and I think that's what Biden's plan is to do anyways. If you haven't heard, there's a Medicare surcharge tax. If you make over $200,000 single or $250,000 as a couple, then there's an extra 0.9%. And on investment income, there's another 3.8%. So, again, these I don't think this tax cut was meant to help the wealthy, folks. This is what I want you to think about, okay? Don't kill me. Don't kill me, absolutely. But think about the folks that are making $30,000 and $40,000 a year. They have families, $200 a month or $265 a month or $360 a month on average, going back to be used for things like groceries. I do think is actually a pretty significant impact. Do I think it's the best idea long term? No, I don't think that. But we have a little bit, okay? We have about 10 or 15 years until we get to Social Security age. So what should you do if you are doing fine the way things are? Your job is cruising along like it would be, and this payroll tax cut is going to be nice, but you don't need it. Well, why not do a couple different things? How about increasing your retirement savings by 7.65%? Right? Has anybody thought about that? Why don't you take that as a bonus to your retirement savings for this month? I personally would rather take my own 15.3% that we have to pay and invest that on my own, because if I invested 15.3% of every dollar I ever made my whole life, I would be much richer than Social Security would ever make me. The problem is most people on average don't save money, right? It's against our human nature, for example, is what the psychologists tell us. And most people will never put this money away. Okay, so this is why Social Security taxes are in place, is because most people don't save for themselves. The average retirement savings is about $100,000 per year, about $120 now, I think it is. So, people in general won't save on their own. So I do think we need Social Security in place. But I don't, I saw it was almost 400 comments of people just going crazy about this or that, about what's going on before we really even know anything, okay? So let's number one, let's just talk about, let's deal with what's fact right now, okay? Let's deal with what's in the moment. There's going to be some lawsuits that come up. They're already talking about this. I think it's probably going to go through for now. And there are some questions here of, do we have to pay it back, okay? So that is something to be concerned about, that there could be a chance you may have to pay it back in the future until it's finalized, okay? I don't think that that's going to be the case. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they'll figure out something to where it gets forgiven, okay? But there is a chance of that, okay? So you still want to put that in the back of your mind. But if you're dealing right now with a pandemic, you're dealing with your hours cut, to be honest with you, I have family members that are in the restaurant industry, and their hours have been cut down from 60 hours down to 10 or 20 hours, per week. So this stuff is real, and people are losing, a lot of income because they're just not working as much as they were before. So a couple $100 a month really can mean the difference between groceries and not having groceries. In the nonprofit, my wife's nonprofit, we've seen families come in sharing with us stories how they're all sharing one loaf of bread because they've run out of food, right? This is real stuff. Not everybody's getting unemployment, by the way, okay? Not everybody gets unemployment. This is something that we don't always realize. And then there's people that still haven't even received their unemployment because of all the government backup, right? So there's other problems that are going on right now. So if people can receive a few $100s extra a month for the next 5 or 6 months, I personally think it's a good thing. I think as long as they use it smartly and they do the right thing, that's a good thing. I don't think we should probably eliminate it forever unless there's another plan in place, because Social Security, for what I do, is the foundation of the majority of people's income. I'm going to be really honest with you. Even if you have $1 million saved, which, a lot of people do and a lot of people don't, but, a safe withdrawal rate is probably $30,000 to $40,000 a year off that. But if your Social Security is another $30,000 or $40,000 between a couple, that can be a huge impact. And this is kind of the average, millionaire next door type of situation is, where they maybe can do $30,000 or $40,000 a year off their investments, and they get maybe, let's say between $1,500 to $2,000 each if you have 2 workers, or maybe a $3,000 benefit total. That's another $36,000 a year. So it's kind of what you would get off $1 million is what you get from Social Security on average. So I really think we need to keep this program in place, but we know there's already going to be problems. So we know there's going to have to be some adjustments made at some point. With the pandemic going on, I think the right thing to do right now is to give money to people's pockets, because people that are doing these essential worker jobs are not getting the unemployment. They're not getting, they got a stimulus check, sure, but that's long gone by now, $1,200. That wasn't, life changing. So I really do think it's good for those people. So try to take that into account. Try to focus on what's true right now, which is Social Security is not going away at this point. Okay, it's not completely going to zero. Let's try to remember that. Okay, let's be rational. Let's be calm. A lot of people are very angry and very upset and emotional. Let's not talk about that yet. But that until things are fact, then let's deal with them at that point. Okay, I'm gonna check here for some questions while I review some things here. Okay, because I saw some questions coming through. Okay, so Philip has a good question here. Okay, so Philip said, is this just a payroll tax deferral? The way I read it has to be paid back to be determined at a later time. So Philip, technically, I think you're correct right now, but I think the goal is to have it forgiven. I think just right now, we are dealing with a mess, okay? We have a Senate and a House that are not communicating. They want totally different things, and things aren't getting passed. So the president, I do feel he did the right thing by doing an emergency executive order to get some money back into people's pockets. He landed in the middle. Republicans wanted 200, Democrats wanted 600. He put 400. Listen, it's again, there's people that are out here starving, sharing a loaf of bread. Okay, this is real stuff, and not everybody has money that they can pull aside from. So that is the case right now. But I think his goal is to get it forgiven. And we don't know, okay? This is why I'm being straight honest with you. I'm not telling you to live on magic fairy dust or anything at this point. But at this moment, where people are getting their hours cut, they are not having the income they need to pay their bills, I think $200, $300 a month, or let's say $360 for the average family per month is a big impact. And it is something we have to be considerate about. But let's say it's 5 more months, or let's say 5 to 6 more months. That's about $2,000, somewhere in that range. So, it's something to think about that may have to be considered, and it could be turned into a tax credit, just like the stimulus check was. We don't know yet. So, it could have to be paid back. But again, I don't think that's going to be the case, because I think that would cause a lot of problems, but who knows? Okay, so I see all this hearsay stuff. I'm not going to talk about this. Nowhere has Trump said that he's trying to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. That's never been said. He never has said that. So let's not talk about this crazy stuff. This is a good question. So won't Congress most likely delay changes to address Social Security fund till the last minute, or they motivated to fix it sooner? I think you're probably right. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Right? This is the reality of the situation. Let's talk about the pension system in California for a second. This is a perfect example. Okay, so I've been really studying California politics lately, because it's just, this place is the most corrupt place I've ever seen. Maybe New York's worse right now, but California is horrible. Okay, so what these folks do, okay, in the pension systems here, and this all goes through the unions. All right, so the unions vote what increase in return that they're going to get on their pension every year before the money that's in the pension fund has actually made any money. Okay, so for example, the average guaranteed increase they've gotten every year is about 7% right now. Okay, what person in their right mind would say we can guarantee 7%? For those of you that are out there looking for 1 or 2% guaranteed funds that you'd be happy with, I think we would all raise our hands, shouting up in the sky for a guaranteed 7%. But the problem is, nobody wants to fix it, right? So nobody wants to be the bad guy, because if you're the bad guy, then you're going to get voted out. You lose your power. So I'm with you, Daryl, that I think this is going to get delayed. I don't know if it's going to be the last minute, but it's going to be probably closer to the time when we have to deal with it, probably closer to 2030. I doubt they're going to fix it earlier, but hey, maybe they will. I have no idea at this point. But most times, politicians do not want to put themselves in front of the firing line, because their chances of them getting voted out are very high. So that's probably, you're probably right on that one. So that's good. Okay, so Brian Dickerson here. So it seems like taking Social Security early at 62 would be the best, considering it may run out or may be significantly reduced. So I disagree with that. So 62 can be right for certain people, okay? The people that's really good for 62 are the ones on kind of both ends of the spectrum. Like if you just don't need the money at all, then it could be a good idea. Or if you really need the money and you have no other choice, to take that early. From my experience, okay, and I've done about 200 financial plans, maybe 250 financial plans at this point, and so that means 250 Social Security analysis that we have to look at. For most people that have some money saved, okay, for most of them that have some money saved, generally it does make sense for them to delay at least a little bit. And the way I look at it is how big do you want your guaranteed income to be? Right? So your guaranteed income, which means your floor, so no matter what, you have a certain amount of money coming in, that is what I would want you to look at using your Social Security as a tool for. A lot of people think about it like break even, and it's one thing to consider, but I look at it like longevity insurance, because this is what that maybe folks don't really, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But when I go to like these retirement conferences and these retirement education things, they usually have some sort of medical person that comes in and talks about how underprepared most people are for the extended longevity we're expected to have. Okay, so what does that mean? The average age, if you're already about 60 years old, the average age you're expected to live is about 84 and a half for men and about 86 or so for women, which means 50% of people live longer. Okay, if you have a married couple, both are 65, there's a 51% chance one of you is going to live to 91. Okay, by taking Social Security early or delaying, your break-even point is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 76 to 78, somewhere in that range. That's kind of the average age right there. So if you are going to live beyond that, then it makes more sense to delay. The bigger thing to think about is the back end, okay? What if you have extended longevity, right? What if you live to 95, 105? I have a client whose mom is 103 and still drives to the store every other weekend to go pick up her groceries, okay? 110 or 120 are going to be the normal in a relatively near time. And it's going to happen very fast. Now, we're talking about the next 10 to 15 years. So many medical advances are supposed to be coming that we're expected to be adding quite a bit on our longevity. So, Brian, I would look at it not more so from the stance of longevity and how long is your money going to last. And if you have a chance of running out, you might want to take your Social Security consideration then. The second thing to consider with that is basically never that I can think of, that I know of, by the way, has the government ever taken something back from people retroactively, okay? So what that means is, let's say you turn 62 in 2020, for example. If you take your Social Security now, or let's say in 2025, and you have that going through and Social Security gets reduced starting in 2035 and later, I think it's very unlikely they're going to reduce your actual benefit you're already receiving, okay? I think it's much more likely that it's going to be the people that start receiving their Social Security at 2035 or later that are going to see the reduction, and that's if there's no changes made. Okay, that's if there's no changes made. If we make changes, which again, this changes from the numbers I've seen are relatively simple. Increase the tax by 2%, 1.7, 1.8 over a number of years. Increase the limit, so from 137 all the way up, for example. Or privatize it where they can invest a little bit more aggressively because we earn hardly anything on our Social Security money returns. There's some solutions there, but I personally think that you should set your plan expecting for it to be there today, but then have a separate plan. And we always do this with clients, by the way. Whenever we're doing a retirement plan for clients, we do a stress test and we say, what would it look like if your Social Security was cut by 20 or 30%? What does your retirement plan look like if that were to happen in the future? And we run those numbers. And I think you should have a plan in place that does have a clause for that, right? So that you know what to do if Social Security were to get cut by 20 or 30%. How would you react to that? We don't have control over a lot of these things. I mean, we can vote certain people in and certain people out. But I do think we can have a strategy that addresses what we know today with pure facts, not using emotion, and then also have a backup plan in case that doesn't work out the way that we want it to work out. And if we get cut by 20 or 30%, how does that turn out? Right? So these are things that, especially, for older folks, I'm just not as worried. When I'm talking to clients that are like 30 or 40 years old, we talk a lot more about the potential for Social Security getting cut. For my folks that I'm doing retirement plans for that are retiring today, we still talk about it, but it's not probably as significant as a thing to think about. So the other side of that question, Brian, is if you were to go from 62 to your full retirement age, I'm just going to say it's 67 to make my numbers easy, but you get about 5.75% per year, right, for each year. So if you multiply that, let's call it 5% to make numbers easy. You'll get about 25% more by waiting from 62 to 67. So if you were to wait till 67 and you could live off what you would have got at 62, well, then technically you'd be at the same place, even if it did get cut by 25% in the future, right? So re-listen to that again, the math, I think, will work out on that. So I think there's more reasons to delay, and I think you should take the whole picture into account, not just living from a place of fear that the money's just going to go away and disappear, and so you should just take what you can get while you can get it. Because it's very unlikely it's going to go to zero. And I know people do want to get rid of this tax, but I don't think Social Security is going to go to zero. If it does, then we have to have a backup plan. But can you imagine if we took out Social Security from everyone in this country? Like, it would just be absolute chaos. I don't think it's going to happen. It might get cut. It could definitely get cut, but we have to have a plan for that. Okay. Let's see here. All right. So this is a good question. Not an easy one to answer. James, how could it possibly be paid back given the state as being described people are in? It won't happen. Probably likely. This is why I don't think it's likely going to have to be paid back, to be honest. I don't think it likely will be. But you're right. This is the whole point of what we're talking about here is people are in rough shape. A lot of them. Actually, a lot of people are still doing fine, by the way. I talk to a lot of people and they're working from home. They're loving life. They're not buying a bunch of clothes, fancy shoes, driving all the time. So they've actually are saving more money now that they've been working at home. But there are a bunch of people that still are in kind of a really tough state. So I want to be sympathetic to them. And you're right. I don't think it can be necessarily paid back. And that's why I don't think it's going to probably have to be. But I think there's some other things still to be determined. So Dick says it sucks to live in California. Tax-wise, Dick, okay, yes, you're right. But California is a wonderful state. I visited some other states. I haven't found one I like better yet, but it is on my list, okay? I'm trying to find somewhere where the taxes are better so my wife and I can live and save a lot more money if we decide to move there, but haven't found that yet. So if anybody has recommendations of states they think are better than California, let me know. I will come visit once things open up. Okay. So let's see here. Sean said, is there a way to start this from the beginning? Sean, if you just wait till the broadcast is done, you can go back. It'll be here for you, and you can start it from the beginning. Okay. Oh, yeah, good. Thanks, Kim. Kim got that. All right, let's see. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Okay, so Cindy, I can't up my 401k at work because they took our company match away for the rest of the year. Whether they change it back or the first year remains to be seen. So they took your match away. So this sounds like you must be maxing out your 401k already, if this is the case. Because if you're not maxing out your 401k, then you could just raise your 401k percentage, right? But let's say you're maxing that out. Well, do you make under the amount to still contribute to a Roth IRA, which is about 193 or something like that? Okay, so Roth IRAs. Let's talk about that for a second. So if your 401k has no more room, what can you do? What should you do? I say contribute to a Roth IRA. I'm trying to find my little cheat sheet here that tells me the limits because I know I have them here somewhere. Where's my Roth IRA deal? But it's around 193,000. Okay, I think it's 193 to 203 if you're married, and it's a little bit less than that if you are single. Where is my cheat sheet? This is what you gotta love about doing things live, guys. Let me just Google it. Let me just Google real quick. So if you have a Roth IRA, why not just contribute to a Roth IRA, right? And if you can't do a Roth IRA, then why not just put it into a brokerage account? You can still invest there. People get really stuck on that, but sometimes you can just use a brokerage account and invest there. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so let's see here. Roth IRA contribution limits for single, let me see, this is 2019. For 2020 is 124 single and 196 joints, married filing jointly. Yeah. So if you make under those amounts, why not just put money to a Roth IRA? You still get tax-free growth. That's a good thing to do, right? But even if you don't get the match, you can still increase by the 7.65%. Just figure out what that number is for you and put that away and save that somewhere else. Brokerage, Roth IRA, something like that. You can still save the money. Okay. Okay, so this is a good question because I think people misunderstand this. Okay, so Peter asked, does this affect just Fed income tax or that plus Social Security and Medicare? This has nothing to do with federal tax. This has only to do with your Social Security and Medicare tax. So every employee is required to pay 6.2% of their income to the Social Security fund up to $137,700. I hope I'm getting that right. Yeah, $137,700. And then beyond that, you don't have to pay any more Social Security. Medicare, you have to pay 1.45%, but that goes all the way up, okay? And then if you go over 200 single or 250 married filing jointly, you have to pay an additional 0.9%. So it's basically eliminating the 6.2 plus the 1.45, which is 7.65% total. If you're self-employed like myself, it's 15.3% total. Honestly, folks, I would much rather take my 15.3% and put it in, an investment portfolio for the rest of the year, and just let that sit and that be my Social Security, substitute, then put that with Social Security and have them invest it. Personally, I would, but I think a lot of people can't do that, and so that's the point of having that there. So that's all it is, Peter, is just that portion. Okay. Barbara, she says, I don't think either party would ever do it with Social Security. I agree with you, Barbara. I'm with you. I don't think we can get rid of Social Security unless there's some sort of universal basic income, that UBI concept, which is a possibility. Actually, once we, full automation kicks in, we're probably 20 or 30 years away from this. But once we have full automation kicking in, we're probably going to have a universal basic income at some point. So that'll probably be the future. But we're not there yet. Okay, so Sean Stryker. Sean is ripped. Sean, that's good. Look at you, man. That's good. All right. What's the fairness in those making over 100K and not getting a stimulus or a payroll cut, but will note to have my tax increase to pay for everyone else's payroll tax cuts and stimulus payments? Good point. But Trump did say he has a payroll tax, or excuse me, a federal tax coming for the middle income folks. Okay. So he didn't say what, but he did. And actually, I agree with you. This is what's happening in California right now. In California, this has been happening for 30 years, but we're seeing a massive separation of people that are low income that are just getting, they get free health care, they get a lot of subsidies here, and basically they, going to be forever renters, and they have rent control coming in now in places like LA and San Francisco. They're going to be there. We're going to have the lower class there. And then we have the very wealthy class. So this is like, the tech industry, the Hollywood folks, the really high, there's a lot of people here make a ton of money there. And the middle here is getting hollowed out like crazy. So the amount of families that earn somewhere between 100,000 to 250,000 that's leaving, the numbers I saw were about 100,000 per year. And these are folks that we're just getting crushed, right? Once you make over 500,000 a year, it's like, do you really need that much more money to live off of? Because if you make 500,000, you might keep, let's say, half of that or something like that. Living off 250 a year, 20 grand a month, you're probably going to do okay. You have $1 million home and still be fine. But the folks that are at the 150 to 250, those folks are getting really, really killed. And, if you have kids and you're paying that tax, which is why we're seeing we have 9.3% of our money that goes to tax above 56,000. That's $9,300 a year that you can put in your pocket by moving from California to Nevada if you make 150 grand. So this is why there's a lot of people moving out of here to Nevada, Texas, Florida, states like that. Unfortunately, they're bringing some bad things along, with their ideologies, but that's just, and, their home, a $600,000 home here is considered normal. So they'll pay $400 or $500 no problem, which has driven up the real estate markets in, in Oregon and Washington and Texas. So I know you guys will hate Californians for that. But I think that's something to consider. The middle tax cut for you, Sean. The middle people are supposed to be getting a tax cut as well. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know anything too detailed about that. Dick, can you reemphasize your question? You said, did you say if you don't need it to take it early? I said that could be a reason, right? But most of the folks I work with that don't need it, they have a lot of money in pre-tax accounts. So we've talked about this multiple times before. If you have a lot of money in pre-tax accounts, and you're not going to need it all post 72 when your required distributions kick in, you want to be thinking about partial Roth conversions. And you probably don't want to take your Social Security if you're going to be doing partial Roth conversions, because you're going to get taxed on it all, and so you don't see as much of it. So that, if you don't really care about that, then that might be something to consider. All right, so. Kim says shouldn't have to take a cut. This is our money that we paid in. Yeah, the system again, Kim. I agree with you there, but the system was designed to support people for 1 or 2 years, right? Like most people after they retired, back when the Social Security was created, I think in the 20s or 30s, they died within like 1 month to 2 years max. They didn't live for 20 or 30 years. So the system has now become this like massive behemoth to support people for decades beyond what was ever expected and planned for. So everyone knows this is going to be a problem. It's not like a hidden thing, and we have to address it at some point. But as someone mentioned earlier, who wants to be the one to take the blame for it, right? Barbara, we love upstate New York, but still New York, not much different from Cali. Yes, I know New York is a nightmare right now, just like California. But I heard upstate is nice, except during the winters. I think I would freeze. I don't know if I can handle that. Shannon has a question here about Arizona. How do I feel about a retirement state? Seems like a great place. I was looking at it, and someone put it in an interesting way. So I always thought, okay, the summers there are blistering hot. You're not going to be able to go outside, and so that's going to suck, right? If you leave from another state. But this person was from Chicago area, and they're like, well, I'm in the house for 2 or 3 months a year every year anyways because it's freezing cold. So I just live inside during the winter. What's the difference? It's just shifting my winter months to summer months that I'm inside. I live in the AC, but the rest of the year it's really nice. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's wonderful. That's a great way to think about it. But tax-wise, very reasonable. Cost of living-wise, very reasonable. And you can get a really nice house there for a decent price, depending where you want to live in Arizona. So it seems like it's a good place. If I compare to California, it's like anywhere pretty much better tax-wise. So, hey, Denise from Boston, appreciate you showing up. So that's all the questions I have for you today, folks. What other things do you have that you have questions about this? Because I saw this crazy amount of comments, and I want to make sure we talk about this stuff. I'm going to put up my info here in case anybody wants to chat more about their situation, because I think maybe people do need some help. So if you would like to chat with me, you can go to keepitsimplefinancial.com. Let me see if I can find my other logo there. Let's see. I think it's this one here. Yes. Okay. So if you want to set up a call to discuss your retirement situation, you can go to keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk. If you are somebody who's worried about What happens if your retirement gets cut in 20 or 30 years? You want to have a plan you put in place so that you know what to do if there are changes in Social Security or other government programs like this. This is what we do. We help people plan for this. We'll help you create a game plan, we'll create a backup plan so that you know what to do if the stuff comes up, okay? keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk. So I think that's most of what we got for today, folks. So, okay, this is what I want you to take away. Stay calm. Stay in the moment, okay? Make your decisions based on what we know today, not on rumors, especially not on turn off the news, okay? The news is horrible on all sides right now. Every network is like twisting things like no other. Get your information directly from the sources, okay? Listen to the people speak. Go in and read the actual bills. Read the actual whatever's trying to be passed. Read the information that's in writing, okay? Read that. Get your information from there, because I'll tell you what, when you look at things like the PPP loans, you look at the EIDL loans, all these government programs, the stimulus, the news makes things sound so crazy. But if you actually look at things, it's quite a bit different than what you see sometimes being spewed about by the media. Okay, so take it for what it is, folks. Take your 7.65% and do the best you can with it. Save it, invest it, use it for something important right now. If this becomes a permanent thing, we'll talk about that, okay? Well, but we're only going to deal today with facts and what we know is going to happen today for sure. And then, if things change, then we'll make adjustments, okay? We'll go from there. But hopefully you found this insightful. At least you maybe took something away and you enjoyed this a little bit. I appreciate y'all watching. If you need help, you want to help creating your plan for retirement so that you can retire with confidence, with a backup plan in case Social Security was to be cut 20 or 30%. This is what we do. Go to keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk to schedule your complimentary call, and we'll be happy to chat with you then, all right? Other than that, folks, I'm going to wish you a wonderful weekend. And my name is Jason Hamilton, and I'm the founder of Keep It Simple Financial Planning, and I really appreciate you watching. Have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon now. Bye-bye.